Madam Mayor, would you like to begin?
Sure. Okay. Do we have everyone on the phone? Do we have a quorum?
Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum, so
Okay.
we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, great. I'm going to have Tammy lead us in the pledge.
Again? Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Breckus?
Here.
Dewar?
Here.
Delgado absent at this time. Weber absent at this time. Jardin?
Here.
Reese?
Here.
Sheevy?
Here.
Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum of the Reno City Council.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just want to welcome our new council member, Reese. Council member Reese.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So officially, this is your first meeting. All right.
No, officially, he called it German on our list.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But yes, you're right.
Okay. And then I would just ask for those that are on the phone, just let Ashley know if you want to speak or interrupt me. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Madam Clerk, back to you, public comment.
Yes, Madam Mayor, our first public commenter today is Tammy Holt Still, followed by Jeff Church.
Good afternoon, Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. For the record, the water is growing and I am here. I'd like to start off with, for those that do not know, this week on Monday, we had a senior citizen who needed emergency service EMS to take her to the hospital. She almost did not make it because the lack of communication with the road closures caused EMS or REMSA to go down dirt Deodore that was potholed, washed out, and everything else. That road is part of the city. It was annexed into the city. But Washoe County, back in 2017, said that they were going to grade it and put either chip seal or a road base on it, and they never did. The good news is this week, Kitty Jung came out, took a tour with me, and now that she is on it, she's really been on it. And I've given her some information, and she's not quite happy with the fact that the amount of money that's being spent for Band-Aids instead of fixing the situation. I did update her on the other things that are coming up with the Water Acts of the United States and the Superfund money. And so she's going to start working with Jeannie. So we're getting a little more work going. Yes, I that was exciting for me. I'm still very frustrated though because of the fact that with what they're doing out there, here's a picture. Those are the HESCO barriers on Chickadee that they are now destroying, trying to move them, and they can't get the dirt out of them because the dirt's wet and frozen, or the sand. And you can see they're torn apart right here.
Tammy, if you turn your phone sideways, I will.
Sideways? I will move. I'm sorry. I tried doing that earlier and it doesn't want to flip.
Okay.
Sorry. I apologize.
Sorry.
So right now, there is also a new bump on Nectar, which is where the church is at. And the same woman who had to get her mom to the hospital has horses. She had to try and get her horse trailer over that bump and bottomed out.
Oh.
Yeah,
With the horses.
with the horses and bottomed out. With Chickadee closed because they're doing this, with the bump on Nectar, that whole area that you see behind there, which you've been out there so you know what I'm talking about, the 2.5 acre parcels between Dirt Deodore and Chickadee, they have really no way of getting out right now. We have a problem. It's time to get the governor involved. It's time for there to be somebody who knows what they're doing because Washoe County staff, and I don't mean the ones that are there trying to do the job. I'm talking management, do not know what they are doing, and I need help. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tammy.
Jeff Church, followed by Sam Dene.
Ready for me?
Yep.
Good morning, folks. My name is Jeff Church. I run a website, renotaxrevolt.com. Invite you to take a look and welcome Mr. Reese. I have spoken in the past about my legal concerns with the Reno Downtown Business Improvement District. Last week I spoke and I had to leave early, and there were some comments about the speaker, presumably me, that I thought were a bit disparaging, and I wanted to set the record straight. I'm not opposed to the bid. I love the idea of the ambassadors patrolling the river, the ambassador program in general, graffiti removal, picking up shopping carts, helping the homeless. I'm very involved in the homeless, having served on a 501c3 as board president. Here's the problem. We are a nation of laws. And I've asked you for a legal opinion, not an email from somebody going, he's wrong, but an actual legal opinion. I've submitted, and you have a handout today, specific legal concerns. I've addressed case law. I've addressed the Nevada Revised Statute. I've addressed federal law. I've addressed the IRS definition of a 501c6, which is a advocacy group, not a charitable group. That includes a requirement that there be a common business interest. There is no common business interest between a church, which you assess, a owner of a Montage condo, a casino, or a mom and pop taco stand. There are no common business interests between those, and yet you claim or you support a 501c6 nonprofit advocacy group. I quoted the U.S. Supreme Court Janus decision and Fleck, both of which came out in 2018 after the formation, and prohibit using taxpayer money to support an advocacy group. As a taxpayer that owns property citywide outside the bid, I gave you quick case law that says you can't support, subsidize rather, a 501c6 with my money. A bid, it needs to be self-sufficient and not supported by outside interests. One of the more important ones that I just found, and I invite you to take a look at this, is the policy apparently is to foreclose and seize property on people that don't pay the assessment. Nevada Revised Statute 361, please Google it, only allows the county treasurer to seize and sell property for the non-payment of taxes. It's specific, taxes, taxes, taxes. You cannot seize and sell property when they don't pay an assessment. The formula for assessment non-payment is found in Nevada Revised Statute 271, and that allows for liens or for seizure via the district court. So I hate to have to put that toothpaste back in the body if you seize somebody's property or you were complicit with the county in doing that for non-payment solely of an assessment. And again, how do we get that toothpaste back in the bottle if years from now? So NRS 361, there's subsections, but I believe it's in the 500 section about the county treasurer seizing and selling property for the non-payment of taxes versus NRS 271. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Sam Dene.
I know there's not a lot of audience for you today, but it's all good.
What am I going to do at the Sam Dene show with no audience? What are the chances? Sam Dene, the heart and soul, body and mind of Reno government. I just happened to be driving by after my workout, and how lucky can I be on a Friday afternoon on my way to happy hour with my designated driver. On my way to happy hour, and I drive by the city council, and there's a big sign out front that says, budget meeting for the city council. I had to do a U-turn right in the middle of that street to get back here. I was so excited. I might even stop traffic. A budget meeting. How lucky can I be on I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I spent many years flying B-52 bombers, F-4 Phantoms, defending the nation against adversaries inside the border and outside of the border. And since my airline, Pan American, was blown out of business over Lockerbie and thrown under the bus by the U.S. government, I have been coming to these government meetings. I was the person who appointed the city manager. I appointed the fire chief over there. I appointed the chief of police. And and nobody, it must be true. The media never says I didn't do that, so it's really true. But I could go on and on and on about all the things that I've done. I am the greatest guard angel against government bureaucrats, and especially against wacko freak, media, cowardly, treacherous, yellow belly, lily-livered cowards. don't they want to come up here and say, Sam, well, I'm not really a coward. I may be yellow belly, but I'm not a coward. You never hear him deny it, so it must be true. Ask King Solomon. If somebody says it over and over again on public, on YouTube, on television, and it isn't exactly a pleasant thing that I'm saying about those yellow belly, lily-livered media wacko freaks, but not a word. Crickets! Crickets! Crickets from the media wacko freaks. Everybody in here who likes the media wacko freaks, put their hand up. Well, there aren't many hands to go up because there's nobody here, and no hands went up anyway. The worst enemy, we have a lot of enemies in this city, but the worst enemy by far is the media wacko freaks. If we had an honest media from the 25 years that I've been coming down here, protecting the citizens against the media and against the wacko freaks, I would have been mayor long ago. I'm the greatest gunny sergeant Hillary ever had. Say no. Say you've had a better gunner. Said it. No, she's not in her head. Okay. The greatest gunny. I'm going to be the best gunny sergeant this new guy ever had before. That's for sure. Already. And okay. Did anybody enjoy that? I mean, where's my teleprompter? I'm running out of things to think about. Not. Anyway, this Wild Creek golf course thing is the worst. I've seen a lot of schemes, and it ties for the worst scheme. Waste of government, not waste, embezzlement of government tax funds that I've ever seen. That was terrible. And those people who are doing this to Wild Creek folks should be taken to court in felony charges for elder abuse. Elder abuse. They don't like those old people. They don't have one logical reason why they're doing that. Did I make any sense what I just said? And I hope you've got enough money in the fund to pay for Daybreak's $50 million you're going to have to pay him, and the 52 you're going to be lending those guys out there, and the $300 million you're going to spend to build a $40 million school. Thank you, thank you, thank you over there. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sam.
Madam Mayor, with that, we have no further general public comment, and we're moving to approval of the agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, may I get a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilwoman Dewar, second from Councilman Reese. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Madam Mayor, we're now moving on to presentations regarding budget core services and strategic plans.
Okay, I am going to assume it's the wonderful Deborah Lochner. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Today is the first in a series of meetings that we're going to be having to allow you to take a little bit of a dive into each department's operations, and they can talk about kind of their accomplishments. So today, let's see. We're going to go through their core services and strategic plans. We're going to start with the finance department and then the city attorney's department, and then we'll finish up with fire.
Okay.
So being as finance department goes first, I will start.
Okay.
So for the finance department, we run essentially 5 divisions. We have accounting, budgeting, financial planning. There's organizational support, which is primarily procurement and running the city mailroom. And we do the sewer billing function. So with our accounting, we do all the reporting that is required from financial oversight. And that is the big project of every year is our CAFR, the financial reports. We manage the debt portfolio, and we do everything related to accounting. We assist the departments, and we move things around and make sure everything's right. With budgeting, we're right now in the process of developing our budget. We're meeting with all the departments. We help them manage their budgets throughout the year. We look and see if there's pressure points and problems that may be coming forward, so we can help strategize how to deal with those and plan for future issues such as those. In overall financial planning, that's where we do a lot of the analysis work and the reporting, and we manage our investment portfolio. This section of the finance department is really those other duties as assigned, and there's a lot of projects, and this is where we get the support for those projects. again, like I said, organizational support is we run purchasing and the city mailroom. And this is procurement not related to public works projects, but related to everything else that the city purchases. And then we do sewer billing. We have a lot of sewer customers. We have an odd agreement with Washoe County where we bill and some of their customers and remit the money to them. I think both Washoe County and the city of Reno would like to see that agreement go away, but there's some logistics to getting through that. So our primary goals for the coming year are to continue our research and potentially bring forward a restructuring of the redevelopment bonds. We are in the process right now of doing some cash flow analysis to see if it's viable to extend the plan. Actually, we would need to update the plan and extend it, and then refund the bonds associated with the redevelopment area that are currently being backstopped by the general fund. We're also, well, that covers the first two. So we're also looking at doing a review of and updating our policy regarding reserves. Right now, our reserve policy is not strong enough for us to actually have restricted or committed funds. So we need to make sure we have a strong policy going forward, and that requires some analysis to understand what our reserve needs are. We're working with the Special Assessment District at Stonegate in the very preliminary stages of that. That is going to get very complicated very quickly. And we're monitoring all of our debt service and initiating those restructures. And I believe our latest restructure is closing next week. So it's all been priced. It's just now in that little waiting period, and that'll be effective, I believe, on the 26th. And then we'll look at redevelopment. That's the next area to look at. We are constantly monitoring economic conditions to determine if there's problems coming forward. We like to have a financial forecast, and that requires us to understand the economics and what may be coming down and where we may see some pressure points. And we're going to continue our enhanced collection efforts of revenues that are owed to the city in all areas. So those are primarily what we are working on. And with that, if you have any questions on the finance department, happy to answer them. If not, we'll move on to the city attorney's office.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
All right, go ahead, Councilwoman Breckus.
I'm asking for this department and all departments to show us your total FTEs. I don't know, maybe I missed that on the slide. I'd like to know if you had any FTEs added in last year's budget and if those have been filled. I'd also like to know if you have any vacancies at this time and what are those vacancies. And then also if you're anticipating any position requests for this budget. I'd also like to call out that while the city took a $150,000 check to hire some experts, we just heard that it's going to be a programmatic priority to from staff resources to monitor and put together the Stonegate analysis. And I think that in adopting this budget request, council is accepting a prioritization of your resources for that purpose, and that's not a purpose that I accept going up to the top of the queue. I've been asking for months about where we're at on the redevelopment, and that analysis hasn't come forward. Also, the manager has gone out to the departments and asked for any revenue ideas. I'd like to know and understand how that's going and where that is as a program priority for you on, exploring revenue concepts. And then also, I'd just like to again express my desire to see a risk manager who is separate and apart from the city attorney's office and see that as a position filled in the finance department. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but just wanted to bring all that up, and I'll just go on mute and get your responses. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I will say the meetings that we're having right now, we're not diving into the finance side of each of the departments. Those will come with the budget study sessions, which I believe the first one is scheduled for March 25th. But I'm happy to, and we're happy to bring forward the FTE information with that. I can tell you within the finance department, we are currently have 19 FTEs. I currently have, I believe, 3 vacancies, interviewing next week for 2 senior management analysts. That's the position that manages the budget development and also manages sewer billing. Those positions we can't do without because I mean, we're making it work right now, but that's going to cause some problems if we don't fill those positions. In addition to that, I have an accounting or a management analyst position in the budget development. Right now, we're developing our budget with only one person associated with that division. We have in the finance department a administrative services manager who is helping manage the budget process. So right now for the entire city, we have 2 people doing the entire budget process. So I hope that answers some of your questions, but we'll be bringing forward more details on that related to the, when we bring forward the first study session. As to the priorities, once something comes across my desk that requires that we get to a resolution, it becomes a priority for me. And that would be why the SAD is up there, because it has come across my desk, it has been assigned to me, it has become a priority for me to at least push that forward so the council can make the appropriate decisions.
Well, I appreciate all of that. If I may just follow up, Madam Mayor, I appreciate all that. I just really would like an examination of risk. I feel that our approach to risk through having it in the litigation means that our approach is a litigation one to risk, and I think that we need to be more focused and broader in our approaches to risk. And frankly, I think we have a lot of risk piling up right now that maybe indicates that we need to take another look at how we manage risk. Thank you.
All right, City Manager Saber Newby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the record, Saber Newby. Councilwoman Breckus, I hear you on the risk manager need or risk management need, and we will be looking to fill that need ideally within the next fiscal year, if not sooner.
And I will tell you, I did leave one thing off. The finance department is requesting 1 additional position this coming year in the sewer billing function. So when our long-term senior management analyst left sewer billing, I had nobody able to step up to that position because of the difference. We have accounting assistants and we have a senior management analyst, and there's nothing in between. So I am asking for that kind of succession planning position going forward.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Any other questions?
A more general question.
Okay, go ahead.
With the budget, I was a little confused when Deborah said something about March 25th. So could you just explain, is that a portion of a continuum of these 5 meetings, or?
So thank you. For the record, Saber Newby, Councilwoman Dewar, we are planning these presentations similarly to the ones that we had in those special meetings that we had last year for each of the departments to go over their major areas of business and operations and then talk about their goals for the next year. Right now, we still haven't yet gotten the estimates from the state and from the county on revenues. So I think it's probably premature to talk about adding in the budget for FY20. But we will be going through that as part of your regular budget hearings. These are sort of the additional added ones that you guys had requested last year.
Okay, so do you have you guys are going to send us a schedule for the other budget hearings?
Certainly.
So what we're planning on right now is we have these Friday meetings
Right.
that'll go through the 22nd.
Right.
And then the following Wednesday at your regular council meeting will be the first study session where we can get direction on the budget from council. Then we'll go off and do our work for about a month, and we'll come back at the beginning of May
Okay.
with a couple more study sessions for the council to do those final determinations so that we can adopt the budget prior to at least enough in advance to get the state paperwork done, which is due June 1st.
Okay.
But those are a lot of dates, so we can put those together for you
Yeah,
in
that
a
would be
memo,
great,
so you
but I
have
think
it.
I get that you're gonna do an overview, then you're gonna come at a regular meeting and talk numbers, and then you're gonna come about a month later and talk numbers again.
Correct.
But these are exactly what we're talking about now, though, is like you are planning to ask for an additional position. And so the only other thing I was gonna ask is, in that process, you'll get us the org chart that has the positions on it, or which position you're asking for, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that'll be similar to what we did last year in the budget presentations when we talked. So last year, we did a combination of what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Along with all the numbers.
Okay.
And so that became kind of confusing, I think.
Okay.
So what we've set this up for, to do what we're doing today with all the departments before we actually talk about the numbers, to allow you to ask those questions, understand their operations a little better. And so when they do come forward with the numbers and what the proposals are, you'll have a better understanding and be able to give us good direction.
So what I'm really asking, though, is at what point in this process do you expect that you'll give us like an org chart that shows what positions you're proposing?
So I believe that'll come forward with
Like on the
that
25th?
March.
March 25th?
That study session, we should have, here's the basics of what we're seeing in the budget.
Okay.
Revenues, expenditures, all the different things that we provide every year, so that you can give us
Yeah,
direction.
no, that would be great. I just wondered
Yeah.
when or where we should expect that. That's all.
That should be at that
Okay,
meeting.
great.
Madam Mayor, go right ahead. Thank you. I am a little bit disappointed in this process because as a new council member, I had no idea what we're doing today. And I'm just really disappointed because I would have liked to have added some things that I think would have been really important. If these are considered the presentations for each department, I do think that, maybe I'm wrong with this is a presentation from finance, that we should have an org chart. We should have things that are given to us for each department.
Okay, I think you make good points, but let me just kind of butt in because you are new. We're actually starting this much sooner than we used to in the past.
Right.
And so this is just like the very like sort of introduction surface. You're going to get a ton of materials and it's
Okay.
it's a much bigger process. And then I think you'll feel a lot more comfortable with it. So I think I also think we kind of put this on to this agenda just to start to say, hey, we're going to start to go into budget. Because in the past, we really just sort of jumped in and didn't have a lot of feedback and communication with Deborah. And last year they changed it. So just so you know, so you feel a little bit more comfortable.
Thank you, Madam
I think
Mayor.
you'll be inundated with everything you get.
Well, and that really is great to know. However, I think the process should have been explained to the public, to us, that we know exactly which departments are coming before us. And if this is what this finance department is doing today, I would like to make sure that the council members have what we need at each presentation. I just think that's important. And number two, the question was asked by Councilman Breckus or talked about our at-risk person that we're filling in, and I don't know, the at-risk manager. She said something about it not coming out of the city attorney's office. Is that something that we're discussing, that we talk about? Or I just like to be filled in a little bit on that.
And I guess for me, I just wanted to clarify, I would sort of classify this as a soft rollout into, before we get into budget, because we're starting so much earlier and prepping so much more.
Correct. And also with 2 new council members, it's important for you to be able to ask questions of the departments on how they operate, what their issues are, what they're seeing. And before you're actually talking about numbers and we've actually put together the whole proposal. So that's where we're headed first, is to allow you to have that dive into the departments where they talk about, these are our core services, these are the things we're working on. So that, again, if we're not working on the right things, it's an opportunity for the council to provide us with.
And I would also
that
just
direction as
say
well.
to the new council members, be prepared, because we'll have other probably meetings that are about 4 or 5 hours long, just diving into budget. It's a long process.
Thank you. Well, after 12 years of serving on another board, We did things much differently. It seemed to me that we were very organized and we knew, the public knew which departments were being heard. I know finance, we're talking about the budget, but I hope that you're coming back under
Oh, yeah.
under other things and that we can talk about or ask.
Yeah. Oh, no, this is gonna be months. And.
Well, and I
thought
understand
this
that. It could-
process was way better than last time, and you weren't here yet last time, so
Right.
I'm just seeing it from the other perspective.
Right.
It
Madam-
was much more like what you were talking about.
Madam Mayor, I think what's being done is great. I just think that the process needs to be explained and that the public needs to know and that we all need to know what departments are coming forward and it needs to be planned out and organized. So
Well,
that's
it's
just,
very agendized.
Okay.
So everyone will have plenty of notice. And I just
And
think you'll
I'd be
feel.
happy
com-
to
I
send
think
you a
you'll feel
memo saying
confident
which
with it.
dates each
Yeah.
department's coming
Thank you.
forward,
Yeah.
because we
Thank
have
you.
it planned out.
thank you, that's great.
And I can also provide you with all of the org charts for all of the different departments as they stand today.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Madam Manager. And I also think, though, one of Councilwoman Weber's points is that when we post the next agenda, it would be good to put what departments are going to present so the public knows. I think that was one of your points as well. So I think that's just a very small add to this agenda so other people can attend. I think that's all she's looking for to get started. Just to get started. And I think a follow-up question would be, so Deborah, just so we're all clear, because there is a changing process for the first 4 years, 3
Yeah,
years.
big
We did it
change.
very different.
Yeah.
We asked and asked. I wanted it much more like the county did it, just to be honest with you. And I asked and asked. We got to a really good process last year. So I'm surprised even, I'll just admit to you that we're even changing it from last year, because I thought last year was pretty darn good. But what you're adding now, you're saying we're adding, like, you're calling it the soft opening. But for those that are new, or even me, like, I have no idea that you had 19 positions or what they do, what their jobs are, just sitting here today. I know you do a great job. I know a couple of your people, but, you know,
And we'll be bringing that forward like we
Yeah.
typically do in the regular study sessions. What
Yeah.
we were trying to do with these is to allow you to ask those questions of each department, and not make the future meetings 5 hours where we're discussing budget, so that we can try to streamline the process a little bit. So I understand this is
Yeah.
new. But we took advantage of the fact that you were having Friday meetings and to allow you to actually take a deep dive into each of those departments and not be worried or concerned about the length of your agenda.
Right.
well,
And I
personally.
asked her to
sorry.
kind of start now so that we could it's kind of putting everyone on notice that we're just getting ready to start budget. This isn't even, I mean, you're just glossing over it. And that's
Well-
just to kind of say, here we go, we're starting.
I'll
And
tell
you
you-
know what the
okay.
process was last time.
Yeah.
And all of the, the information that we have. So I don't want everyone to think that, this is the meat and potatoes. It's not. We know that. But
Well, it
I
would
do
be
think
good
it's
to get the org chart and also what your current budget is. So if you're really wanting to get us up to speed, new members, they have to have, like, do they have to know, is it 1 million or is it 5 million, or what order of magnitude is your department? And so then when we get to the meat
But
and
this
potatoes.
presentation isn't the deep dive. just
No,
so you
but
know.
then the deep dive, I think, is the changes, right? Like we want to add.
What we
No.
typically tell you is what our current budget is, where we are,
Yeah.
what our projections are
got
to
you.
getting through, and what our requests are for the coming year. That's what typically comes forward in those budget study sessions, along with the org charts and the people and how many is in each division.
The only thing that's faking me out is that you're saying it's going to be at a regular council meeting, and that is the last place that I want to take any kind of time to quote
Councilwoman
study.
Dorr,
That's the way
You
we've
can-
always.
We can talk about the
We will.
process.
Yeah.
Okay?
We will.
If
Madam
everyone
Mayor-
wants to go over it, I'm just saying, like, I just thought it would be good to, just to start talking a little bit about budget, not get in the whole meat and potatoes, but so everyone starts thinking about budget. And then we'll have we have lots of workshops, lots of information. This is just, I thought it would be good for her to take advantage of the time that we are here on this special meeting, but not get into it because we don't have a lot of time today. So,
We don't, but Madam Mayor, I just think it's important that when we come in, and I apologize for being late, I came down North Virginia, and you don't do that on a Friday afternoon. I think this is absolutely great. But I think as council members, I think we really needed to know what we were talking about and not having to discuss it here. And so I'm just hoping that at some time, and I'll work with the manager to find out what the process is. And it's just really difficult.
Yeah.
And I just never anticipated that we were going to even be discussing this part, this at all. So I know it was on the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. And for the benefit of the new members, I think there was just the questions that were posed about some of the positions or additions or not. Those were posed by a council member. Those are premature to what we are launching today. And I think that's the best way to put it. And maybe the new members didn't know that. And so I guess the best way to put it is, while there were some questions about additions or budget numbers, we are not at all prepared to talk about that today because that was not the intent of today. So that was the only clarification, was that those questions that were asked by a council member. It's premature because we haven't even gotten into the workshop. I guess that's the clarification.
Exactly.
Well, wait a second. Can I just ask a question? If
All right,
those
you guys, come
questions-
on.
Yeah,
We got to get moving.
but-
So
but
go ahead.
Can I get
Come
it?
on.
Could someone suggest if those questions were like off the ground rules, could someone suggest what is an appropriate question to ask of this presentation for illustration purposes? I'd like to maybe, I thought I was clear, but now I'm hearing I'm not.
Councilwoman Breckus, that's fine. You can ask those questions, I think, to Councilwoman, Weber's concerns. You kind of have a lot of experience already in the budget, so I think you were asking, some questions that she probably wasn't aware of. So I think that's the difference. It wasn't, we're not trying to do anything here other than just start to do a very, very minimal
Right.
briefing of budget time is
dipping our
coming,
toe
get
into
ready. And then everyone knows we sit down with Deborah personally, we sit down with the city manager, we get lots of materials, we'll get to read over them. And, today I don't think, it wasn't meant to be a deep dive.
Correct. And I'll tell you, you can ask those questions and the departments may or may not have the answers because we haven't rolled up numbers. We don't know yet.
Yeah, we're still in the baby stages. Okay, thanks. Okay, let's move on, please.
Madam Mayor, for the record, Saber Newby, City Manager. We had planned for the City Attorney's Office to be heard today, but I did hear from Mr. Hall last night, and he's still out with his procedure. So we are probably going to reschedule him to a future date. So with that, we're going to go ahead to fire.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members, city manager, Dave Cochran, Reno Fire Chief. I'm going to give you an overview of our department, kind of an anecdotal description of our core services and then our primary goals. And then, of course, I'll be available for any questions. So you've seen this slide before. We're an all-risk department, and I just wanted to bring that up again because that's going to drive a lot of the goals that we have. We are stretched, as you know, in terms of service. I was at the legislature on Tuesday with Manager Newby and Dylan Shaver, along with Deborah. And one of the points I tried to make there was we're being stretched not only in volume, you add population, you add call volume, but geographically, because some of the development pressures are coming on the outskirts of Reno, out of the primary developed areas. So that's why I wanted to emphasize that all-risk capability that we have. As I have said before, when they call 911, they don't know who to send, they send us. So we have a lot of burden, and I mean that in a good way, a lot of burden on our services, so it's going to continue to be stretched. This is for the benefit of the new council members, really just something to put in your pocket. At the fire department, we talk in terms of district. So up at the top there, you're looking at Reno, that refers to Reno Engine 9, that's District 9. I know you look at it in terms of wards, so I wanted you to be aware of what stations are in your ward so that when you're talking about the departments, the stations that you're looking at that serve your constituents, you'll have an awareness of that. So we break it further down into Battalion 1, which is north of the river, which is what you're looking at here, and then Battalion 2, which is south of the river, which you're looking at here. So the color coding goes to the ward, the numbers and designations go to our station locations. So here, anecdotally, like I said, I'll describe our core services. We operate 14 fire stations with 17 companies. We have a total of 259 FTEs in the fire department, and we have no vacancies. We have our fire prevention division, our operations, our line division, which are the fire engines, the trucks that you see out on the street. We also have our own mechanic shop, and then, of course, we have administration. In 2018, we responded to just under 42,000 calls, slightly less than last year, than 2017. 2017 was a record year for us in terms of call volume. It was a 12% bump from the year before, which was also a 12% bump from the year before that. So we had a steady increase, but in these last 2 years, we basically hovered around 42,000 calls, 300% increase from our call volume of 20 years ago, which is a nice reference for me because that's basically the span of my career. We also have the same staffing level that we had 20 years ago. So 300% call volume increase at the same staffing level is what the fire department is looking at. Just a point of comparison, New York City, large department, huge department. They go to a lot of calls. They average about 120 calls per firefighter. We average 200 calls per firefighter, over 200 calls per firefighter. If you want to look at another metric, the number of firefighters that you can request or that would be appropriate by population, a conservative number is 1 per 1,000 of population. That would put us at 250 firefighters. Right now, we're at 213. So again, just another benchmark for you to look at. If you want to look at that, the fractional comparison, one is a conservative estimate. 1.28 firefighters per 1,000 is a national average. We're at 0.87. We do provide the highest level of emergency medical service you can provide. That is the paramedic level of service. That's the highest that it'll go in the field. We have increased our number of paramedic stations to 7. We plan to further increase that this year as we add additional paramedics. We have a class of new recruits that are still on probation. We have a handful of paramedics in that class. When they get off probation, they will go through our preceptorship program to then be qualified to act as paramedics for our department. And when we have those additional paramedics qualified to provide that service, we'll look to increase the number of stations that are providing paramedic level service. 2018 fire season, we, as you know, send our resources out to assist other jurisdictions. And that's because the fire service in general is a system. No one fire department could ever justify having the staffing, the budget, everything it takes to fight a fire like the Camp Fire that you all were aware of last year, or even something remarkably smaller but still dramatic and still a huge impact, the Collin Fire or the Washoe Fire that occurred here in our backyard. So when we are asked to help, we send help, and when we need help, we ask for help. Last year, we went to 54 wildfires in 8 states, represented 155 personnel and over 24 apparatus, and we're going to get about $1.6 million in reimbursement. That's a little bit on the high side, but not much. We typically are in the $1.2 to $1.5 million range in terms of reimbursement for those off-district assignments. I mentioned the 12 new recruits that we have. I believe May 7th is their anniversary. That's when they'll come off probation and be full-fledged line firefighters for the department. We have been successful this year in securing funding for 3 new apparatus. You're well aware of that. You approved those purchases. We had a group back there going over the final design specs for the 2 engines in the truck. They were there last week, which incidentally is a great example of the cooperative effort up and down the length of the fire department, because we had everything from firefighters, operators, captains, to chiefs and mechanics all back there as part of our team working with the manufacturer to really fine-tune the details so that we get exactly what we want and what's going to be best for the fire department. They worked cooperatively and 100% came back with this was a great experience, and we're very pleased with what we expect to get. We'll take delivery of those apparatus by the end of this year. We've updated our computerized staffing. We've always used a computerized staffing model, but we've updated that to make it more efficient. The firefighters can now use that model on their phone. You know, current technology, we're a little behind on that, but now we're catching up. They can use that to track staffing, as can the battalion chiefs. We're also implementing a new inventory management system. It'll be department-wide, and that's a huge change because, again, looking at my career, we have not changed our inventory management system over the course of our career, my career, 20 plus years. This Operative IQ is the name of the system. It's going to make us more effective and more efficient. And by more efficient, I include fiscally efficient in that process as well, because we're going to be able to manage and order and use our inventory, our supplies in the most effective manner possible. For the first time ever, we initiated our own advanced EMT course. That is the new name for what used to be called the EMTI, for those of you that are familiar with that term. That's the intermediate level of service that we provide. More than an EMT, less than a paramedic. So every rig that is not a paramedic rig is an advanced EMT rig, and we just graduated that class last Saturday. And we have expanded our shop facility, both physically and with the staffing levels there, having added mechanics, and we've expanded the building as well. We took over the neighboring portion of the building. And then the next slide, I'll go over the priorities, but you see there at the bottom, community outreach is a priority. I want us to be out there so when people come to Reno, when they have a problem or when they don't have a problem, if they go to one of our special events, one of the community events, they're seeing the Reno Fire Department in a positive light. We're very active with a lot of charities. Next month, March, we're going to be doing reading in the schools. We'll read to over 1,500 students in Reno as part of that program. Something that's not up there because it just happened since we submitted this PowerPoint presentation. A local business reached out to us. They wanted to do a fundraiser. I asked them which charity would they like to support. They didn't really have anybody in mind, so I said, why not the Donor Network, which I know Madam Mayor is familiar with. We've tried to partner with them, so we're going to do we're going to partner on a fundraiser with the charitable organization, the charitable recipient being the Donor Network. So excited about that as well. So here are our primary goals, and I'm really going to emphasize those first three. We need to increase staffing. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation where our staffing levels are, and you've heard it before, and that's kind of one of the overall arching messages we want to get to the council is you consider the budget process. We need to increase the number of line personnel we have out there. Apparatus is next. We have an aging fleet. We presented here, and you have the details from prior meetings on that. And we've made progress. We have those 3 apparatus on order, and we have direction, I say the royal we, including Debbie, has direction to include funding for an apparatus replacement program in the budget so that you can review and hopefully approve that process going forward, that program going forward. And then a big lift, but one we need, is fire station replacements. We have 2 stations, Station 1, which is on 4th and Valley, and Station 21, which is at the Grand Sierra Resort. They have a projected 10-year lifespan. They're now 11 years into that lifespan. They were both supposed to be temporary stations. I don't want to be in the position where we're replacing because we have to, in a crisis mode rather than a planned mode. And I know that's a big lift because fire stations are expensive, but it needs to be a priority. And then, of course, one of the council priorities in terms of the city strategy is expanding our paramedic service. And I talked about that. As we add paramedic, we will expand the level of service of the number of stations that provide that service. And then finally, community engagement. Not necessarily a budget priority, although it does take some level of money, but we have the budget for it to an extent. We've cut back on some of that community engagement because we had other needs, whether it be supplies, people, wildfires, whatever it may be. But I want to just circle back to that to conclude and emphasize that community engagement is important. It's important for us to be out there in the community so they see us. I regularly get communications from the citizens, email, voicemail, text, whatever, and I'm not bragging, but I kind of am. Most of it, and by most I mean 99% of it, is positive. I'll tell you a quick story where I got a voicemail and it started off, hi, this is Citizen X, and it started kind of down the line. I had your people here, and it kind of had that tone like, uh-oh, she's going to conclude. And it said, but Captain Swiak, he was an angel. And she went on to describe how it wasn't really a medical emergency. They just needed basically somebody to be there for them, assist them with some almost a social services type work. But Steve did, and she was so grateful. She called me. In fact, it was up in your ward, Councilwoman Weber. And I'm very proud of everyone in our department because I get that communication on a regular basis. One of the other things, a shout out, again, bragging, and it's not me, it's the firefighters, the line personnel. What I am seeing from the department is how engaged they are. I mentioned that group that went back and did the detailed work on our apparatus. A different group came in, said, hey, we really want to get involved in recruiting. We want to make this our department. We want to make it more diverse. You know, how can we do that? So we've teamed up with OCCNE to advance that. We have a captain's training academy that we've been putting on for a while, but now we have a cadre of line personnel who said, we want to take that over. We want to make it ours. We want to push this department forward. And I could go on and on, but there's a lot of examples like that of not me asking people to do it, them coming to me and saying, we want to do this, can we? And my response is always, absolutely, let's make that happen. So with that, I think I'm done. So if you have any questions.
All right, good job. So I want to know who saved the cat. Who was that?
That was Justin Hurtado.
Justin.
Justin is an all-star.
Justin's amazing.
He is amazing.
He looked so happy.
And
The cat looked a little stressed.
Wouldn't you be? I mean,
That was a
looked
big
stressed.
cat.
That was a big cat.
That was a really big cat.
and Justin's not that big a guy, but
But it
but you know what? He's
certainly put a smile on his face.
yeah, and that is Justin. He's been working. He got hired a couple years ago, and he brought in a stack of journals, detailed chapter and verse, all the ride-alongs he'd been doing with different fire departments. And I'm going to tell you, it was a couple inches high, and it detailed everything he'd been doing for years to get a firefighter job. And I was like, I can't
Wow.
not hire you.
Well,
I
you
think
can
it was
can
like
tell
18
that
in a
he
day at
really
the time.
loves what he does, and
Yeah,
that was awesome.
yeah,
It was great.
yep,
All right.
Chief Cochran, I have a question.
absolutely.
And I apologize for interrupting. I too share a passion for organ and tissue donation for a variety of reasons. So I'm interested to know about what you plan there. But it's just something that I'd like you to be aware of from my perspective, that it is something that I believe very strongly in. And so when we have the chance to meet, which we are going to have the chance to sit down, I'd like to hear a lot about that.
That would be great. So, and I'll just real briefly, I know that the mayor knows Candy Candler, who's my point of contact. That's who, we contact regularly, trying to coordinate regularly, trying to look for opportunities. And just coincidentally, she had reached out to me, just touching base a couple weeks ago. And then a local business, Full Pedal Cycling, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
It's a gym. They said, we want to do a fundraiser. I said, who's your donor? I don't know, you pick one. So I contacted Candy, and she said, love to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we have the donor duel coming up. When is that? Do you have any idea? Okay, I'm counting on you guys. We have to beat UNLV.
Oh, that's right. I was wearing my shirt from that this morning.
All right, great job.
Okay,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions from council members? Councilman Weber?
How'd you know?
I could just kind of tell. You
Question.
were like,
And looking at the north jurisdiction, are these the Cold Springs area? When it says R9, what does that mean?
So we pulled that from a map that shows everybody. So R refers to Reno.
Okay,
So because it had S for Sparks, TM for the county. It had all the stations on it, and to be able to distinguish which is a county station versus a Sparks station versus a Reno station, that's where the R comes from.
okay. So the R9 in Cold Springs, does that mean Station 9?
Yes.
So Station 9 is responding from Stead area?
Correct. Now, Cold Springs, remember, is county.
Right.
So we cover the city limits. Station 19 in the county would cover the county portion of Cold Springs.
19. Okay.
And it's
Okay.
just a coincidence that there's 9 and 19. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I should correct that. They renumbered their stations, and frankly, I haven't caught up with the rationale behind their numbering, so it's not sticking. But it may not be Station 19, but they have a station in Cold Spring.
Okay.
It used to be 19, but they went to the 40s. It might be 41 or something like that. So,
all right, good job.
okay.
All right. Okay,
May I?
yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. Oh, just since we were on that Cold Spring service areas, up until how many units will we up in Stonegate will we be without a fire station up there?
So in the fire development agreement that we entered into with the Stonegate group calls for a 2-person station at 250 units and a full 4-person station with an engine and a brush truck at 1,700 units.
Okay, 250 units response from STED in the early stages. Thank you. So, and let me know if this is not the appropriate time to ask, or someone point me in the direction of how I can maybe get these questions answered. But I am curious about the 2 stations that are temporarily that have been browned out, and looking at some statistics on those. I presume one Skyline, one Somerset. Just what has been the annual staffing levels? When was it 2 people? When was it 4 people? When was it no people? Just of all the hours, in the last year, what are we looking at that? And then how does fully staffing those equate over to FTE? If your biggest need is FTE and we give you FTE, I'm just curious if that means those ones can get fully staffed. And then on the paramedic EMT kind of innovation effort, I know the manager has told us she'd like to pursue this grant for some sort of transport. If that's part of the operations for next year, can we get an understanding of what are the budgetary commitments to that as we move forward? And then the third thing is, you've recently put in a request for some new sort of positions down at Civil Service. Are you now asking that all firefighters are paramedic licensed when those lists are produced and issued? Thanks.
Okay, so taking those in reverse order, the Civil Service question, they were not paramedic requests. What we did was went to Civil Service and asked them, can they, Civil Service, go back to the people, the firefighters, the recruit candidates, if you will, on the existing hiring list and allow them to upgrade their qualifications. So in other words, if since you got on that list, you have become paramedic qualified, can we upgrade your qualifications so that that reflects on that list? And I'm told that 6 people have upgraded and are now qualified as paramedics on that list, which will enhance, it'll make it a more robust list and enhance our hiring ability. The temporary stations, and I'm missing the in-between question, so they're not browned out. 7, they're not currently browned out. 7 and 19, 7 is Skyline, 19 is Somerset. We're browned out up until the end of 2016 when we opened both of those with 2-person crews. Now, I will concede that they're browned out in the sense that we don't have an engine up there, a 4-person engine, which is our standard, and that is my goal, and I think it's the council's goal, to have at least that at all of our stations. The FTE is needed to increase that staffing from a 2-person rescue, which we have there now in each of those stations, to an engine would be 6 per station, or a total of 12. That would be the minimum in order to bump up that staffing level. My recommendation would be that you add 15 in order to add an additional floater to cover the normal vacancies on each of those shifts. So again, 12 would be the minimum to bump both of those up to a 4-person engine, and 15 would be the request, I think. Oh, and and I think the other question was, are we requiring you to be paramedic certified? And the answer is no. The minimum qualifications is EMT, but we are trying to expand our paramedic level of service. And as the most effective way, fiscally and otherwise, to do that is through hiring paramedics, but we do not hire exclusively paramedics. So,
Madam Mayor,
Can I ask
I just need to note for the record that Councilmember Jardin is no longer with us, so for council members present to be cognizant that we have one on the phone, so we don't lose quorum if we lose too many of you. Thank you.
Could I just follow up on a quick question on that? Chief, good presentation. I didn't hear the grant program that we're pursuing for transit, and I want to be very clear is, in an optimistic world, you get those 12 or 14 people. Is that your optimal deployment, to put them to Somerset and Skyline, or do you feel that it is optimal to keep those 2 at the 2 people and put those bodies elsewhere where you have higher call volumes? And then last question is, if people come in to our system with a paramedic qualification, does that come with a higher entry salary? We want qualified people, just wondering about the budgetary implications. Thanks.
Sure. So very quickly in reverse order again, no, if you come in with the paramedic qualification, you do not get a higher entry-level salary. That does qualify you once you go through our certification process for an incentive later on. But in terms of the starting process, no, it does not. I'm going to address the where do you deploy those people question last because I wanted to get to the grant question. You mentioned that. I skipped over that. The grant is not really a grant. There's an alternate revenue opportunity, which I'm going to be talking more about. I've talked with the manager about it. I believe she included it in one of your council updates. And this is going to require a partnership with REMSA, and we've been in communications with them, and I will continue to be in communications with them because there's no other way to put it. It's a very lucrative opportunity for the city that is not available to REMSA, and frankly, that's been one of the selling points to REMSA, is that this is not something we're competing for. This is something that we can collaborate with that, in my view, would ultimately assist both of us because that it's a reimbursement availability for basically our overhead that's Medicare, Medicaid has made available, and we need to trigger that availability through transport, which again goes back to the cooperative effort with REMSA. But I think we can get there, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to work collaboratively. Now, in terms of those personnel, those FTEs, if we add people, and I'm gonna give you the competing views. 6 people would either upgrade Station 7 from a rescue to an engine, so from a 2-person rescue to a 4-person engine. Again, that 4-person engine being the benchmark, the standard that we live by. But the other thing you could do with them is put a rescue or a squad at Station 3, which is our second busiest station. By way of comparison, Station 1 has an engine, a truck, and a squad because they have such a huge call volume. Station 3, similar call volume, has an engine and a truck. Adding a rescue or a squad to Station 3 helps mitigate that call volume. Adding 2 people to Station 7 gives you an all-risk capability up there. It provides a higher level of service, but it does not mitigate call volume because you've added people, but you haven't added apparatus. So those are the competing views. Increasing that level of service, but not mitigating the call volume versus mitigating the call volume, but maintaining the level of service in areas where, frankly, we would say we need to upgrade it, and that being Skyline Station 7 and Somerset Station 19.
Councilman Breckus, is that sufficient?
Yeah, that is. I really want to follow this transport concept. I just see so much ahead of us on the queue with the apparatus, the headquarters, and the personnel that introducing this new functionality, really want to know if there's going to be any budgetary implications as we move forward this FY on that concept. Thanks. But thank you very much, Chief.
If I could just address that 30 seconds, there will be no budgetary implications, and I really want to pursue that well. I've talked with the manager extensively about that. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it's maybe something that you and I can get together offline instead of taking the time this afternoon to get into the details on that. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, Madam Clerk, we are actually going to take a really quick recess because we kind of have something special that we're going to do. We were going to present it tonight, but unfortunately their rehearsal schedule isn't going to allow us to do it, so we invited them to come to a council meeting. So just because we have it for them and we wanted to make sure that we presented it.
So we will take a 5-minute recess.
Okay,
As we're not
thanks.
agendized.
I appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
receive it. The first was Kiss when we were here. So there must be something related with keys and rock legends. So thank you so much for being here. And I have our new council member, Councilman Reese. He is going to give you, did you bring the proclamation? Yes, I just sent it to you did? And some of you guys might know Susie. She opened Rock Bar and she's amazing. She has incredible musical contacts that come through Reno because of her and all her work. So, so we're excited to have you. Are you excited to play? You're playing tonight, right? Tomorrow night. Very cool. Have you been able to see our city?
A little bit.
Oh, it's cold, huh?
Tried to yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not as well.
Right, and I see you're wrapping up your tour in what, Queens, New York? It looks like it. I see.
To the mayor for allowing me the opportunity to present this to you because it's pretty exciting for me too. I'm a big hair band fan too, so I like that. But it is a special day. Jake Lee, it's my honor to welcome you to the biggest little city. I understand that your career has spanned many decades, but a pretty cool gig as the guitarist, a guitar player for Ozzy Osbourne, and after years of performing with Ozzy, you've made your home here in Nevada. So that's very exciting for us. I understand your current band, Red Dragon Cartel, is a very special and personal music band and interest to you as well. So I have this proclamation, and so I'm going to read it now. But it says, whereas Jake E. Lee was born in Norfolk, Virginia on February 15th, 1957, and whereas Jake began his music journey at an early age, moving from the piano to the guitar, aspiring to be like his musical influences in Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin. And whereas his career moved him to San Diego, then Los Angeles, making him a part of the groundwork and musical foundation for many now famous bands, including Rat, Rough Cut, Enough Is Enough, and Dio. And whereas his legendary snarling guitar playing and witted matching attitude landing him as Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player, in which he changed and influenced the music world moving forward while still taking time to be an established race car driver. And whereas after years of collaborating and performing with the band Ozzy, Jake made Nevada his home. Jake is now focused on more personal music projects such as Badlands and the current Red Dragon Cartel, further influencing the music industry by mentoring upcoming aspiring guitar players and working with famed guitar manufacturer Carvel to create the Jake E. Lee branded line of guitars. Now, therefore, I, Devin Reese, on behalf of Hillary L. Sheevy, Mayor of the City of Reno, Nevada, do hereby proclaim Friday, February 22nd, 2019, as Jake E. Lee Day, in and for the City of Reno. Encourage all residents to recognize the music, impact, and inspiration that Jake E. Lee has offered the world. Congratulations. And here is the city, key to the City of Reno, which I know they'll want to get some pictures. This is yours.
So we're flying a little under the radar, but thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Where are you living in Las Vegas?
I live in Las Vegas.
You do? Okay, we won't
Great.
hold it against you.
No.
Well, you're still Nevada family.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I was talking.
You have a lot of musicians down there.
Yeah.
You guys all hang
Let's take the picture over on this side.
confirm, Councilmember Breckus, are you still on the phone?
I am.
Okay. Madam Mayor, with that, we can resume. We do have public comment on item B1 before we transition to the legislative update.
Okay, let's do it.
Jeff Church would like to speak.
Good afternoon, folks. Jeff Church. Wasn't going to speak, but after listening to the fire department, for the benefit of the new people, perhaps they don't know, even perhaps the manager, I just wanted to give some constructive public comment, put some things on the record. Many of you may not know that the fire department comes out of the general fund, but it is augmented by a ballot measure known as R3. So I invite you to look that up, see how much money that generates and where that money goes. To the best of my knowledge, the current contract prohibits volunteers, prohibits seasonal firefighters, and they do not have an automatic aid agreement with the county, with Truckee Meadows, with the city of Sparks for all service fire medical issues. I believe it's only for structure fires. I remind you that the Reno Fire Department operates with 4-person crews versus Sparks, NDF, Truckee Meadows that use generally 3-person crews. I also remind you that we have a FAB, Financial Advisory Board, and that they often weigh in on issues related to the financial management. I suggest you might want to dust off some of their previous recommendations that were ignored and maybe even seek out their advice. These are experts in the community on financial issues, CPAs, et cetera, et cetera. So please don't ignore the FAB. They're there to help. I also remind you that I agree with Ms. Breckus. Medical response units are not a fire station. It's not a duck. It doesn't quack like a duck. They don't respond to fires. However, when we talk about call volume, medical non-fires are the majority of the fire calls. Now that, again, medical accidents or the proverbial cat in a tree. One recommendation that was made by a previous council member, if you contracted out, say, Station 19, Somerset, to a non-RFD entity, that would free up 2 firefighters to open Skyline number 7. So right there, you'd have your 4-person crew. I also suggest you consider the use of paid reserves, such as retired RFD members. It gets in their blood, and they'd probably be happy to help out. There'd be union people. There'd be subject to contract, just like everybody else. But there would be a great resource, especially on your red flag days when fire stations often remain closed. And of course, next week, we're talking about SAFER. I hope to be here. But you might consider any SAFER grant be shared so as to have a bigger net, so you hopefully get more potentially to get it to pass. So you might consider Sparks and Truckee Meadows Fire. But those are just some different issues regarding fire service that maybe people didn't know. And so now you know. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Mayor, with that, we have no further public comment, and we're moving to our second presentation of the day, legislative session update from your lobbyist, Dylan Shaver.
All right, well, welcome. This is your first time, right? Presenting in front of the council. Oh, did I miss whenever I was in Washington? Or is this your first time?
Madam Mayor, this is my first time presenting as your staff. You may recall you've had me present here on other issues in the past, but it is an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but now you're on this side, and we are so excited to have you. And we appreciate, I know you've already been, at the legislature, just diving in and doing everything you can and hearing great feedback. So thank you so much for being here. We're excited.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Dylan Shaver, your Director of Policy and Strategy, finishing out his 4th week on the job as a City of Reno employee. I want to give you an overview of the session generally, talk a little bit about our bill tracking system and how we prioritize the measures that come in front of the legislature, talk about the priorities that this council set in terms of bill drafts and other major issues that will be up before the legislative session, and then we'll close up on a handful of other measures of note. Please feel free to stop me at any time, and we'll just jump right in. So you have in front of you this bill tracking list. Right now we're tracking 177 measures, which is about 36% of the measures that have been introduced so far. So I'm not certainly going to go into each one of them into any level of specificity if I bring them up at all. But that's just to say that we cast a very wide net when it comes to our bill tracking. My first week on this job, I met with all of the other department directors, talked to a handful of council people to get a sense of what the city's priorities and needs were. And in my experience, it is much more valuable to track far too many bills than far too few. So we track each one of those. We track bills that may turn into something else further down the line. I don't think there's anybody here without any legislative experience, and you know how on the last day of the legislature, a bill can be completely rewritten to do something completely outside of its original intent. So when you're looking at that list, keep in mind that we are over-tracking and we are doing so intentionally. When a bill is introduced that may affect one of our key issue areas, let's say it's preemption, that's a major issue that you approved at or in the legislative operations plan on your meeting on January 9th, we flag it and then we send it out to the relevant departments and staff in the city to get an assessment of the impact on the city's interests and what we need. We have a new system that then categorizes and houses all of those comments, and upon taking that feedback, we look at their remarks, we look at the legislative operations plan, and from there we make a determination of sort of what the city's position will be. And then from there we determine the level to which we are going to engage. Some things we may oppose but are going to die anyway, so we sort of save our expertise and save our energy for the places where we really need it. Some things we may really want to support, but for whatever reason may not be about to happen. Similarly, you know, we really save our opinions and save our energy at the legislature for where it's going to count. This session, it is not just Dylan Shaver up in Carson City working for you. We have supplementing our efforts, the contracted firm of the Griffin Company. They have a small staff up there in Carson City. Specifically, we work with John Griffin, who we have a long relationship with as a city, and who has been in Carson City for a long time. Councilman Reese and Councilwoman Jardin have been kind enough to loan us a community liaison in Tess Opferman, who we have about 20 hours a week in Carson City as well, and she has just been a great help. Thank you, Tess. And then on top of that, our own city manager has plenty of legislative experience and was in fact in Carson City earlier this week to present on the city of Reno, our priorities and what makes the biggest little city such a great place to be. In terms of taking positions, my goal is to make sure that we are asking council to weigh in only on sort of the larger issues that come up. We certainly don't need to go into the weeds on every bill that affects city purchasing unless that is your desire. There will be things that we specifically ask you to weigh in on, and you'll get, I'll bring one of those up today, in fact, and then there will be things that you may want to weigh in on as your prerogative as a city council, in which case, by all means. These weekly presentations, I will close out this section and say, are no substitute for regular communication. The legislature is 17 weeks long. We just finished week 3 today. So I don't think you would expect you would only hear from me 14 more times about what's happening in Carson City. So you may get written reports from staff, and you are always welcome to contact me directly if there is a question or critical concern you may have. Some of you have already been doing that, and I very much appreciate the feedback. So from there, we will move to the top priorities of the city. You had 2 bill drafts that you submitted prior to my arrival. They became Assembly Bill number 4, which allows the city to create fire protection districts, or would allow the city to create those districts, and Senate Bill 25, which is a clarification of the E911 body camera funding. So Assembly Bill number 4 was heard this week in the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs on Tuesday. As anticipated, it was slightly controversial. It did draw opposition from a handful of business groups, most notably the Las Vegas and Reno Chambers of Commerce, as well as the Nevada Taxpayers Association. Their objections, well, at least for the first 2 business groups, were limited to the vagueness of the language itself. We gave direction to basically take everything that counties could do under NRS 244 and paste it into NRS 268 so we could do it as well. But that original language written in the 1980s was very, very vague. And it appeared to a layperson to authorize cities to levy any tax on anything for the support of a fire protection district. We made very clear to the legislature that is not our intent, and even though it would make chapters 268 and 244 out of line with each other, we would submit clarifying language to ensure that folks knew that that was not the sort of authority the city of Reno was going for. That seems like it will address most of the concerns with the bill. Some groups like the Nevada Taxpayers Association are just uncomfortable with the concept that local governments would have that level of taxing authority themselves, and there is not much we're going to be able to do to shake them of that position. That's just something to keep in mind going forward. So we will work with the fire department and the city attorney to work up that amendment and propose it and see where the committee wants to go. Local government lobbyists, I will say from that experience, aren't used to, I guess, sustaining a lot of criticism of their bills. So a lot of our partner jurisdictions in the region sort of presumed before we even went into the legislature that was a non-starter to begin with. It may very well have been. I may be a little dramatic or be looking through rose-colored glasses. I don't think that's the place. I do think it is worth trying to do a little bit of work on this one. And if at the end of the day the committee doesn't see fit to move forward, well, we'll address that at that time.
All right.
Our other measure, Senate Bill 25, was heard on Wednesday in the Senate Committee on Government Affairs. Deputy Chief Venzon came up. We presented on the measure which clarifies, I should say, that the E911 fees that the county instituted last year or the year before can be spent on the staff that ensures compliance with the law in the first place in terms of redacting the footage that is generated, distributing that footage, and training our personnel on the usage of those cameras. We believe, as did the sponsor of the bill, then Senator Aaron Ford, that was clear in the original intent, but when the time came to actually plan for the use of those funds, the district attorney in Washoe County weighed in and said, no, the language was not as clear as we thought, and so it requires this clarification in terms of the bill that we have brought forward. The bill was well received in committee. The telecommunications industry did get up to oppose what they called the diversion of funds from the E911 fee. To their point, this is not what that fee is for. That fee was originally set up to maintain dispatch centers and things like that. And our position is not to relitigate the decision the legislature has made in 2017 to require these body cams and fund them through E911. Our position is that that funding mechanism is already established, and we would like the law to be implemented in the way the sponsor had intended. So that went over well. We are waiting on an amendment from Washoe County just to clarify some liability issues that are outstanding with what happens if that fund should be found to be misappropriated. But overall, that bill feels like it's in a pretty good position right now. Keep in mind, whenever I make a prediction like that the legislature is an unpredictable place and anything can happen at any time.
Yeah.
Two other priorities that were made very clear to me going into the legislative session, one on affordable housing, and then the other on revenue restructuring for local governments. Affordable housing has started to show up in the form of Senate Bills 103 and 104. We were there to support those measures when they were heard.
What is that? Oh, it's our heating. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. It sounds like a balloon when you know.
I don't mind working with a little bit of background music, and in fact, if we can keep that in mind for future meetings. The affordable housing mechanisms coming forth out of Senator Ratty's interim study on affordable housing, Senate Bill 103, we partially helped create as a city. As my understanding, that bill would allow us to discount sewer fees for developers or really any enterprise fee, is my understanding, should we be able to go through a fiscal analysis and determine it would not hurt the solvency of the fund generally, and should the developer put then that parcel to use for affordable housing units. It is a small tool in the toolbox. We did present in its favor. That day, Senator Ratty did propose an amendment to that bill that would also specifically authorize local governments to engage in rent controls and to create quote-unquote inclusive zoning. The city attorney's office has weighed in on these things previously with regard to your authority. Whether or not you would want to use those tools if put in your toolbox is more of a political question than a practical one, but she is seeking to give you that authority moving forward. Frankly, and we've had this conversation in Carson City, Senator Ratty's inclusion of rent controls may be too hot to handle, we would say, for that bill. There's a lot of opposition to that in concept from the business community. Again, it doesn't specify when, how, or why that would happen. It just sort of creates the tool and leaves it to the cities to figure that out. However, if it looks like it's going to sink the bill, we would likely engage to have it removed from the measure so that we can get the rest of the tools that you need to make the decisions you need to make.
So I have a question. Did you, when Senator Ratty was working on these, like over the last 6 months or so, she gave at least me an indication that she might want us to come down and testify in support. I think it's great that you are. I assume you are. But what do you think about that? Is that recommended? Is that something she seemed to say she wanted it, but I don't know if she really does need it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Dylan Shaver in response to Councilwoman Dewar. It does not appear to me at this time that either of these measures need any extra effort.
Excellent.
Should that change, we'll revisit it.
Okay.
And so stay close to your cell phone.
Okay.
But for the time being, it doesn't seem like that's required.
Okay, that's fantastic.
All right.
Madam Mayor?
Could I ask a question also? Can you hear me?
Hold on, Councilwoman Breckus. I'm going to start with Councilwoman Weber. Go right ahead.
Thank you, and I don't think this is going to be on topic, but it was about the question that our councilperson asked. Do we have a policy whether or not we individually or as a group can go to the legislature? I know in other organizations, and that is a lot of them, they have a policy that only certain people are able to go and speak on behalf of the city or whatever. So I wanted to know if we have a policy, and if we don't, we probably need to have one, and we probably have to have the council vote on whether we do that or not. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I
I can
can't
address
remember
that
if we kind of, did we have a policy?
Madam Mayor.
You're gonna remind us. I think it's every 2 years, so we forget.
That's what we've been doing.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, your meeting on January 9th, I believe you approved your legislative operations policy. In that policy, it says that you as council members obviously reserve your individual right to show up as yourselves. If you are going to show up to communicate a position taken by the city, that you should do so through my office. And it specifically discourages you from communicating any position that is not the view of the city. Again, you are always welcome to show up in your individual capacity as private citizens. For those of you who I've had one-on-one conversations with, and those of you that I have not, I apologize, I haven't gotten to you just yet. My basic request is if you're going to be in Carson City, I would just love to know that you are there rather than hear about it from somebody who had a conversation with you about X, Y, and Z. That same legislative operations policy, which I will send to you, Assemblywoman, and to you, Mr. Reese, or to Councilwoman, and to you, Mr. Reese, also lays out the basic tenets that the city laid forth in terms of what we are looking for out of this legislative session, and authorizes which personnel were able to or are able to represent city positions in Carson City. So we'll make sure that you have that and are adequately
Thank
briefed.
you. Thank you. It would be great to get it again.
All right. Councilman Reese, take it away.
Well, thank you. I think that it's been a great presentation, especially the bill tracking, because I think that's very important, just broadly. For me, and you and I will sit down at some point in time, but for example, I'll be in Carson next Friday. I'm there for purposes unrelated to the city council's business, but I'm there with 100 high school kids who are there for speech and debate day. So that's an example, but I certainly would coordinate any effort that I would be there with you, and certainly wouldn't have any opportunity to speak on behalf of bills or anything like that, which would be your prerogative. But please let me know if I can be of any help. I certainly have deep relationships with both the Assembly and the Senate, and if at all that can ever benefit the city, of course, I'm willing to extend that offer.
Thank you, Councilman, so much. You have all been so active in this community for a good amount of time, and you're leaders in your own right. Something I try to remind legislators is that they are representing the same constituents that you are. And so don't be surprised if any of you hear from me asking you to come up and help sway a couple of folks or have some conversations. Those interactions are valuable, and I value the roots that you all have in the community.
All right, any other questions? from Mr.
I do have
Schaefer?
another question, but I
Go.
thought.
Oh, Councilman Breckus, you want to? Are you there? Councilman Breckus?
I bet we're on mute.
All right, well, if you can hear me, just chime in whenever you're ready. Go ahead, Councilman Weber.
I just had one more question, and that is, how well do we work, or do we work with the League of Cities, Nevada League of Cities?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Weber, for the question. I was hoping to get a little bit of a beat going there. We are members of the League of Cities. That we do a weekly meeting with the League and all of my counterparts from the rest of the cities in Nevada to coordinate our position. The League has been there to testify in support of both of our bills. There are priorities of theirs that we are coordinating on as well. So I'd say, with my limited experience with them, our working relationship is pretty solid. We also just, as a matter of course, coordinate with the other regional entities that may not be municipalities. So, of course, our neighbors at the city of Sparks, Washoe County, and the Washoe County School District as well, to make sure that our regional priorities are all being handled.
I would imagine with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Councilwoman Breckus, are you there?
Madam Mayor, I believe that Councilmember Breckus has just disconnected.
Okay, well, let me know if she comes back online.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
She is present.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I can just barely hear you all now, but I may have to call off and recall. It was working fine earlier, but not now. The question is, are you, about our fire bill, I'm wondering if, I thought we were gonna go over that, discuss it, understand the mechanics of it, kind of the landscape, before it got introduced, and certainly before it got a hearing. And now it's had a hearing. And I just wanted to express that concern, because I really thought it was just a concept, and it moved a lot faster, and I want to express my discomfort.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, much of that happened prior to my arrival here at the city of Reno, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to punt to the city manager on this one.
All right, I'm going to send it over to City Manager Sandra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to Council Member Breckus. When we had those items, I think we brought it twice before this council to select those issues that we were going to use to sponsor our two BDRs. The date for submitting per NRS for our bills is September 1 in the year preceding the legislature. And so we brought those to you and then quickly thereafter had to turn those forms into LCB. Now, all of the bills that are sponsored by local governments are also pre-filed, also per NRS. So all of those are written and released prior to any of the other bills, particularly from committees or legislators themselves. And because of that, because they're all pre-filed, they are often the first ones to be heard because they, of course, have already been produced. Everybody's already read them. There's, they're out in the public already. So I agree it's been very quick, but that is some of the sort of background and requirements on municipalities' bills that sort of drive that quick offering there.
Okay. September to now, do you think maybe it's worth putting this on the 27th agenda so we can flesh it out? I guess we have a standing item, so we can flesh it out. I hate walking around, having a bill come into opposition, and I don't really even understand the mechanics of it.
I believe that there's a standing item on the 27th, and of course, there's the Friday sessions that we're having right now. But I think perhaps that would be best to have a conversation with me and you and perhaps Mr. Shaver offline to really get into the nitty-gritty of the details of that bill.
When's it going to be heard next? Do we have an idea?
It would need to pass out of the committee and then pass out of the originating house, which is the assembly, and then sent over to the Senate and then scheduled for a hearing. So it is likely to be sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thought we were going to get, kind of flesh it out or bless it in its written form a little bit more, but maybe I don't understand the process that well. And then one thing I had asked is that we could also be tracking all of the bills supported by our, or initiated by our sister agencies, the TUMWA bills, the RTC bills, the RSCBA bills, or those that they're going out and asking people to sponsor for themselves. For example, I heard RSCBA is asking for the NRA to sponsor a bill. So I'm just wondering if we could have a separate tracking sheet that looks over all that. And I just want clarification at this time that we're not being recommended to support or oppose any bills.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Dylan Shaver, again, for the record. It's been a while. Councilwoman Breckus, taking those in reverse because that's how my memory works. At this time, you're not being asked to take any positions on bills. I will do my best to make sure that when we do ask that of you, that you get plenty of notice. Please keep in mind that, again, the legislature is very fast moving, so I can't guarantee that will always be the case. But I'll try and make sure that you get some sort of briefing prior to these meetings when we're going to ask you for something along those lines. With regard to the tracking of bills being brought forth by our sister agencies, we can certainly flag something in our database to indicate that which bills those are and run them separately for you. That would be very little extra work. We are happy to do it.
So if I may.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on her point.
Councilwoman Dorr.
Yeah, thanks. So what it is, and you can't be everywhere and know what is all going on, but so Councilwoman Breckus, myself, all of us serve on different committees, or excuse me, different boards and commissions, and they all have set up separate legislative subcommittees that typically meet on Fridays, but they also have a meeting at their standing meeting as well. And we often will debate and discuss a position, let's say that TUMWA is going to take on a bill, water bill, or regional planning, or Western Regional Water Commission. I'm on that one. So anyway, and we're almost every meeting we're asked to know about a certain bill, and they usually just tell us we're watching this one closely, or they're recommending that we oppose or support, as a body. So we know it comes up fast, but still it seems to kind of work, that we at least know it's in the queue, something we're kind of worried about, and that we have an opportunity to let you know what we're thinking. And we may not all be thinking the same thing, so.
I do value that feedback.
Yeah.
And so we will take those, we'll pull those measures out and maintain them for you. And I mean, they'll be in the same database, but you will see them on a separate list.
Yeah, or if there's something, I mean, you have a lot of bills here, and I really appreciated you putting them in this, and I read virtually all of them. But it is just, there might be a couple of them that are seeming a little hotter. The others, or you want to take a position rather than just monitor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
May I ask a question about the housing bill?
Go ahead, Councilman Breckus.
Yeah, I understand that maybe we helped out Senator Ratty during our interim, but I had a question about that provision of no-cause evictions. I mean, it seems like in some ways she's jumped to a bigger strategy of rent control, which there's certainly precedent for it in other states. But there was this concept of no-cause evictions, I think it was called, where people are offered, say, a lease for 9 months or a year, and during that time, if they take the lease, they're set on their rents, but if they don't take the lease, it can't jump. But if they go on month to month, of course, they can have rent escalation during the month to month. But at least there's a mandate that they have to offer a 9 to 12 month period of a cent rent. And that seemed to be more of a middle ground than jumping over to rent control. And I just wondered if that concept made it into any of those bills you're tracking.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Again, Dylan Shaver for the record. That bill, if that concept is in a separate bill that does a handful of things, including changing the timeline for when you can serve someone with an eviction notice and when that clock starts counting and all of that. And as it was not in either of these bills, I'm afraid I can't speak to it very fluently, though I do know that that concept has come up. We did have a handful of our staff take a look at it, particularly over in code enforcement, and I can gladly pull some history on that measure and send it to you.
And I'd like to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a concept that I am most interested in at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll weigh in too. I mean, this issue of no-cause eviction, in other words, you're in a place, you've been paying the rent, you've been on time for even, 5, 10, we've heard of 20 years people have been living there, and then they've just been told that they need to leave. Just leave. And that's really what the effect of this no-cause eviction has been. And so there seems to be no protections for them. And their whole life is upended. Maybe it's even happening towards the end of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been really worried about that. And I think that's maybe the genesis of this kind of bill. So, and it's been just a huge problem right here in Reno. We've seen it over and over with my constituents calling. And we seem to have no tools to help them.
That is an
Yeah, I guess my term was different. It was the serial rent escalations, stories of 3 rent hikes in 6 months, just unbelievable, with no opportunity to be on a 9-month or 12-month set lease.
And that was the same. I didn't want to repeat what you said, but I have the same exact issue with my constituents as well. Calling me every 3 months saying my rent just got raised another 150, another 250.
Yeah. And I will say, this session came up so fast. And then obviously with Scott leaving and then bringing in Dylan, it was very, very fast. I was hoping that we could get some of the legislators here to present,
exactly.
especially Julia.
Right.
And she really knows the challenges, with local government and how we kind of, can struggle at the legislature because how that gets implemented. Maybe at some point she could kind of maybe come, but I know during, this session time, everyone gets inundated in what they're doing. But I would have liked to have had a little bit more conversation on what that looked like on her end. But I think everyone was sort of scrambling with the election and all the change that was happening. So.
And we may just have to have a small delegation go down and meet her at her place.
You know what? That might be good too. So maybe we throw that on your radar, Dylan. So, one more thing to cover. But anyway, I think you did a fantastic job. Tracking information's awesome. And I know that you're doing a great job down there. I'm getting great feedback. And so I appreciate all your hard work and thank you for the update. Unless anyone else has any more questions. No? Okay. Councilman Breckus, you good?
Yeah, I have a few others, if I could. Can you tell me about the 5G bill? We've done a lot of work, good faith, with the telecoms, and now they want to preempt us at the state like they tried at the feds, and we've even staffed up people for this, and I'm very troubled about this.
Thank you, Councilwoman, for the question. For everybody else, she is referring to, I believe, BDR number 286, which has not yet been introduced as a bill. I met with the sponsor on that, Councilwoman, and he is not certain that he is actually going to introduce the bill. He has gotten a lot of objections from jurisdictions like ours, as well as our partners in the labor community, and he has offered to keep us in the loop, an offer I graciously accepted. Of course, as that unfolds, we will, of course, keep you in the loop. It's on my list specifically to you, but to keep the council updated on. But at this time, there's really no further update. We haven't seen any language outside of the concept that you just so succinctly summarized.
Okay. And then the other one is, I understand Las Vegas wants to open up NRS 278. I don't know why that is, but anytime NRS 278 opens up, it can have sideways implications. I mean, one time we missed the whole season and there was a bill the whole session and a bill to move the county line, and it was never talked about at the Reno City Council, and there was that bill. So NRS 278 is a big concern. Have you heard anything about why Las Vegas wants to open that up? It's the planning and zoning statutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Other than Madam Councilwoman, other than having sort of read through the bill and sent it to our team for impact, I have nothing further at this time. But I do have a standing meeting with my counterpart from the City of Las Vegas, and will specifically inquire as to that and report back.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime NRS 278 is opened up, it's really an important point to discuss, and also explain why planning and why planning is important, key, and this is an important tool to cities. And then my final question is about the bill that got a rough reading that would have removed a preemption of cities allowed to have red light cameras. The Department of Public Safety brought that forward again. They've been working with NDOT. It was a comment in our pedestrian safety bill of 2014. I'd like to have the council take a position of support of this. Las Vegas Metro was there. More people are killed on the roads than homicides in our city, and I think it is the right thing to do to stand for this tool, getting rid of this preemption. And I read some of the reporting of the bill hearing, and one of the opponents, sitting opponents in the Senate side said, well, they'll put the red lights in the poor areas and not the affluents. And I just feel as a council member, if someone said that was a value I held or our city council held, I would be so offended. And I just feel that sometimes we need to step up and explain to people who have this statewide perspective what we're struggling with at the city level and why some of these tools are important. And I feel that this one is very important to us, and maybe this bill person intends to kill it, but I think it's worth even us, and I'm happy to be the person to explain why we think this is an important tool. And it's not like the state agencies don't want it.
May I
Go right ahead.
Councilwoman Breckus, thank you so much for the comments. For the rest of the council, she is referring to Senate Bill 43. That is a bill that we actually vetted pretty thoroughly through the city attorney's office, through the municipal court, and through the police department. And there was no appetite from amongst the departments of the cities to support that measure. This council, of course, has the ability to take a position, and then suddenly the positions of all of those departments will change, but the initial reading from both the police and from the city attorney was that that was just something there was no interest in pursuing.
And that's fine, but sometimes leadership you know, what is called for. And I passionately believe that safety on our streets is compromised. It's compromised with our low traffic enforcement numbers, and we need options. And I've spoken to people who have had devastating impacts from crashes in our community, in our neighborhoods. A lot of them come to me or us. Dangerous situations on the street all day. And when we have a legitimate state agency wanting to give this tool to the locals, I think the locals need to stand and explain what an important issue this is and how much our streets are compromised by the situation we have in lack of safety. So I think we should have been there with Las Vegas Metro, and that's why I'm a little disappointed we didn't have this ability to have this conversation earlier. So I'd like to propose to the council that we support SB 43.
Okay, thanks, Councilwoman Breckus. Before we do that, why don't you distribute everything on that bill so that each of us can look over it and see exactly what it consists of, and then the body can take a vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Forgive my ignorance. Is that something you'd like me to do at this moment or at a future meeting?
No, at a future meeting.
Yes,
God, I love it. You're on it. You're ready to go.
No, maybe
You're
on
ready to go.
Wednesday, we
But
have a
I
standing
think-
item, right?
Yeah, that would be good. I think, you know, if you could come Wednesday, and we'll just make it really quick to get those materials from you, and then council can read through them.
I mean, you could even call in. Yeah, but you.
Or
you could
just have them ready and, you know, I
Yeah.
don't even care. Madam Clerk can pass them out.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
So that you can stay doing your job but as long as we have it, or just email it to us so we can all start reading it.
Wednesday's calendar and make a determination from there, but we will be at your service to make sure you have everything you need to make
Perfect.
the right decision.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Go right ahead, Councilman Reese.
This is for our city attorney. I'm just wanting to understand if we are to consider the specific drill down on a particular bill and say, all those in favor of supporting that effort, does that have to be agendized as such? Or will it be as I don't understand. That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, let me go take another look at that. I mean, I think generally there can be at least comment on it so people know which way the body's looking at going. But I just need to pull, and there's a couple Attorney General opinions I need to look at on that point. Thank you.
So just for past practice, at most other bodies that we serve on, they usually have the list, and it's on the list. So we're tracking every time, and if we need to take a position on something, we take it, you know. But
And Madam Mayor, just for clarity, yeah, I believe that's the case. I just want to make sure,
absolutely,
given the question that we're.
100% want
yeah,
you to.
Yeah, very good.
Mr. Shipman, if there's anything I can do to assist you with that, I certainly don't want to lead the council into open meeting law purgatory in my first month on the job.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Councilwoman Breckus, anything else?
No, I don't. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate your consideration of my request and the review of SB 43 for our next Wednesday meeting. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Okay, well, good. I think you survived. You did a great job, and we look forward to seeing you at our next special meeting.
Madam Mayor, may I say one more thing? if
Go
it's
right ahead.
appropriate? Thank you so much. I have joked twice now that I am new on the job, and I certainly don't intend to use that as a crutch, but I would like to publicly thank my boss, the city manager, the council members, and the great team here at the city who have allowed me to hit the ground running and represent you the very best that I can in Carson City. It has really been an honor and a great experience, and everyone's been very helpful and thoughtful, and I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that while I have the podium.
All right, fantastic.
Madam Mayor,
You're
with
not asking
that,
for a raise, are you? Anyway, good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, sending it to you.
Madam Mayor, with that, we'll transition to final general public comment in which Tammy Holt still would like to speak.
Okay, come on up, Tammy.
This is Tammy Holdsdale, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. What you were seeing up there It is on YouTube, and I can send you guys an email with a YouTube link. But what you are looking at is Saturday's flooding. And while that is going, I'm not going to be here on the 13th. So you have coming up on your agenda on the 13th about Stonegate and doing a bond for them. And my concern is the fact that I've heard all the pros and the cons on it, that it's not going to affect your general fund. But you put a bond out there for a developer who came to you saying, we want to do this. And they weren't asking for anything else at the time. They just wanted to do it. Now, all of a sudden, they're changing their mind and saying, no, 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 we need help. Well, you have other areas that need help first. And if you're going to put forth a bond that is to help with infrastructure, that Stead Sewer Plant needs the infrastructure first before new development. And that is one of my major concerns. I understand that it's not going to hit your general fund, but if the bubble pops, which it has in the past, it can again, and oh yeah, it'll just go to the county. You know, if they don't make their bond, it goes to the county. Goes to the county, what does that do for you guys? It doesn't do anything. So we are really asking you to seriously think hard about putting out money for a developer that wasn't up front to begin with it, and then that you have other issues that you need to deal with. There's so much that needs to be done out in Lemon Valley because of the growth of the front of the valley and the city of Reno instead that feed this lake, that our hands are in the air right now. We don't know what to think and what to do, and to see this going on is just aggravating. But this is a lot of water, and this is before all the snowfall that we just received. So just think about it. We have snow on the ground right now, and now we have another wet, warm one coming in. We're going to even be more devastated. So if anybody wants me to email them the
Will you
link.
send that?
Huh?
Send it.
Yes, I will. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Madam Mayor, we have no further general public comment, and we would be looking for the last motion of the day.
All right, I have a motion from Councilwoman Weber. Second from Vice Mayor Dewar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.